Every man on that observation deck held his breath, not because someone told them to, but because the silence demanded it. 16 Navy SEALs, 3 Marine Corps scout snipers, 2 Army Delta Force observers, and a handful of range officials stood motionless, eyes locked on the spotting scopes and high-powered optics aimed downrange into the Nevada desert. 4,000 meters away, nearly 2.5 miles, a target no bigger than a man's torso shimmered in the heat distortion rising from the sand. And standing at the firing line, alone, was a woman they'd been calling Native Ghost for the past 3 days. She didn't look like much. 5'7", maybe 130 pounds, soaking wet, with coal-black hair pulled tight into a braid that fell between her shoulder blades. Her cheekbones were high and sharp, her skin the color of desert clay kissed by the sun. She wore standard-issue BDUs that hung a little loose on her frame, and her boots, scuffed, worn, broken in like old leather, had seen more miles than most of the men standing behind her had logged in their entire military careers. Her name was Kaya Whitehorse, 26 years old, daughter of a Navajo father and a Lakota mother. Raised on the Crow Reservation in Montana, where she learned to shoot before she learned to read, where the wind was a language and the land was a teacher. And right now, every set of eyes in the U.S. Special Operations sniper community was on her. Windage holding at point 3 from the west, called out Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reaper Kane from behind the spotting scope. His voice was steady, professional, but there was an edge to it, a tension that hadn't been there 3 days ago when this whole thing started. 3 days ago, when he'd laughed at her, when they'd all laughed at her. Kaya adjusted her position behind the Winchester Model 70, a rifle that looked ancient compared to the high-tech precision instruments the SEALs carried. It was her grandfather's rifle, hand-modified, hand-tuned, the barrel replaced twice, the trigger smoothed down by 1,000 hours of careful work. The stock was worn smooth where her cheek pressed against it, the wood grain visible beneath layers of oil and sweat and time. It wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be here. The U.S. Navy Special Warfare Development Group, DevGRU, the Tier 1 unit most people called SEAL Team 6, didn't invite civilians to their advanced sniper qualification course. They didn't invite women either, even after the combat exclusion ban was lifted. And they sure as hell didn't invite some unknown girl from the Montana backcountry with a hunting rifle and a chip on her shoulder. But 3 months ago, a video had surfaced online, grainy, shot on someone's phone from a deer stand somewhere in the Bitterroot Range. In it, a figure, small, distant, barely visible, took a shot at an elk nearly 2,800 meters away. The elk dropped instantly. Clean. Perfect. One shot, one kill, at a distance that professional military snipers trained years to achieve. The video went viral in certain circles. The shooting community, the military forums, the gun enthusiast groups. People called it fake, CGI, impossible, but then someone ID'd the shooter, tracked her down through the hunting license database, found out she'd been entering and winning extreme long-range shooting competitions across the western United States for the past 4 years. Always shooting under the radar, always using that same beat-up Winchester Model 70, always disappearing back into the reservation when it was over. Native Ghost, they started calling her, because she appeared, dominated, and vanished like smoke. And then someone at NavSpecWar got interested. Someone wanted to know if she was real. Someone wanted to test her. So they sent an invitation. Informal, casual. A challenge, really, wrapped in official Department of Defense letterhead. You think you can shoot? Come prove it. Kaya had almost thrown the letter away. Almost. But then she'd thought about her grandfather, Edward Whitehorse, Marine Corps sniper, Vietnam veteran, the man who taught her that the rifle was an extension of your body, that patience was a weapon, that silence could speak louder than thunder. And she'd come. She'd driven 18 hours from Montana to Nevada in her beat-up Ford F-150, slept in the truck bed, and showed up at the Naval Special Warfare Center gate with nothing but a duffel bag, her rifle case, and a letter from some colonel she'd never met. The guards had laughed. The admin staff had laughed. The SEALs, when they saw her walk onto the range on day 1, had laughed the hardest. This is what they sent us? One of them had said. Petty Officer First Class Derek Hammer Morrison, a brick wall of a man with arms like steel cables and a smirk that never seemed to leave his face. A girl with an antique rifle? This is supposed to impress us? Kaya hadn't responded. She just signed in, set up her equipment, and waited. Day 1 had been 800-meter shots. Standard stuff for military snipers. She'd gone 10 for 10, all center mass, while the wind gusted unpredictably across the desert floor. The laughter had quieted a little. Day 2 had been 1/500 meters, moving targets, elevated shooting platforms, stress conditions, smoke, noise, simulated combat chaos. She'd outscored every SEAL on the line. The laughter had stopped. Day 3, today, was supposed to be the finale, the ultimate test, the shot that separated the professionals from the legends. 4,000 meters, 2.48 miles, a distance where the curvature of the Earth became a factor, where the Coriolis effect, the rotation of the planet itself, had to be calculated into the shot, where the bullet would be in the air for over 6 seconds, falling over 1,200 feet from its apex before reaching the target. A distance where most military snipers wouldn't even attempt the shot. A distance that only a handful of people in human history had ever successfully hit. And Kaya Whitehorse was about to try it with a rifle older than she was. Winds shifting, Lieutenant Commander Kane said, his voice cutting through the silence. .5 now, northwest. Kaya, you're going to need to. I know, she said quietly. Her voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear, but it carried. There was something in it, a certainty, a stillness, that made grown men shut up and listen. She closed her eyes, felt the wind on her face, felt the sun on her neck, felt the rifle beneath her hands, familiar as her own heartbeat. In her mind, she was back in Montana, back on the reservation, back in the high country with her grandfather, watching him line up a shot on a mule deer at what seemed like an impossible distance. You don't aim at where the target is, he'd told her, his weathered hands guiding hers on the rifle. You aim at where it's going to be when the bullet arrives. You have to see the future, Kaya. You have to trust the wind, trust the rifle, trust yourself. She opened her eyes, adjusted her scope. 0.3 mil dots right, 1.2 mil dots up. Accounting for wind, accounting for gravity, accounting for the spin of the earth beneath her. Her finger rested on the trigger, not pulling, just resting, feeling the metal, the resistance, the moment. Behind her, 16 Navy SEALs watched in absolute silence. No one breathed, no one moved, and then in the space between one heartbeat and the next, Kaya Whitehorse squeezed the trigger. The sound was enormous. The .300 Winchester Magnum round exploded out of the barrel at over 3,000 feet per second, the muzzle blast kicking up a cloud of dust and sand that rolled across the firing line like a miniature thunderstorm. Kaya didn't flinch. She stayed perfectly still, eye pressed to the scope, watching. 6 seconds felt like 6 hours. The bullet climbed, arced, fell, and then, clang. The unmistakable sound of metal striking metal echoed across the desert, faint but undeniable. Hit, Lieutenant Commander Kane said, his voice flat with disbelief. Center mass, confirmed hit. For 3 full seconds, no one said anything, and then the observation deck erupted. Holy shit. Did she just... 4,000 meters, 4,000. That's not possible. I saw it. I saw the hit. Men were shouting, cursing, laughing in disbelief. Spotters were checking their scopes. Range officers were verifying the data, and somewhere in the chaos, someone started clapping. But Kaya didn't react. She simply worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing, and safed her rifle. Then she stood, slinging the Winchester over her shoulder, and turned to face the men behind her. Her expression was calm, quiet. But in her dark eyes there was something else. Not pride, not arrogance, just certainty. She'd known she would make that shot before she ever pulled the trigger. Lieutenant Commander Kane stepped forward. He was a big man, 6'3", 220 pounds of pure muscle, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and a reputation as one of the deadliest snipers in SEAL team history. He'd been doing this for 12 years. He'd made shots in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in places whose names were still classified, and he had never made a 4,000-meter shot. He stopped in front of Kaya, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand to his brow and saluted. It wasn't a casual salute. It wasn't a gesture of courtesy. It was a salute of respect, of recognition, of acknowledgement that he was standing in the presence of someone who had just done something he couldn't do. Every SEAL on that deck went silent. And one by one, they followed their commander's lead. 16 Navy SEALs. The most elite warriors in the United States military. Men who had seen combat in every corner of the world, who had earned tridents that most people only dreamed of. All of them saluting a woman with a beat-up Winchester and a quiet voice. Kaya stood there, small and still in the middle of them, and for the first time in 3 days, she allowed herself a tiny smile. "Thank you," she said softly. Lieutenant Commander Kane lowered his hand. His jaw was tight, but there was something in his eyes, a grudging respect mixed with something else. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. Kaya glanced out at the desert, at the distant target shimmering in the heat. "My grandfather taught me," she said simply. "He said the land teaches you if you're willing to listen." Kane nodded slowly. Then he glanced at the Winchester on her shoulder, the scratched stock, the worn bluing, the old-school optics. "That rifle," he said. "How old is it?" 62 years, Kaya said. "My grandfather carried it in Vietnam. My great-grandfather used it to hunt in the bighorns before that. It's been in my family longer than I've been alive." "And you just made a 4,000-meter shot with it," Kane said, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea how insane that is?" Kaya's smile widened slightly. "I've been told." Kane studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to the other SEALs. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the deck, "I think we need to have a conversation about what just happened here." The men exchanged glances, uncertain, confused. Kane looked back at Kaya. "You hungry?" She blinked, surprised. Yeah, actually." "Good," Kane said, "because you and I are going to have lunch, and you're going to tell me everything." The Navy mess hall at the Naval Special Warfare Center wasn't fancy, but it was functional. Long tables bolted to the floor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of coffee and fried food hanging in the air. It was the kind of place where warriors refueled between training sessions, where stories were traded over plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, where reputations were built or destroyed depending on who was listening. And right now, every person in that mess hall was staring at the small native woman sitting across from Lieutenant Commander Marcus Kane. Kaya had been in military spaces before. Her grandfather had taken her to VA hospitals, to veteran events, to ceremonies where old men in faded uniforms told stories of wars fought in jungles and deserts half a world away. But she'd never been in a space quite like this. Never been surrounded by so many operators, so many Tier 1 warfighters, all of them watching her like she was some kind of exotic animal that had wandered into their territory. She kept her eyes on her tray. Chicken breast, steamed vegetables, rice. Simple. Clean. The kind of meal she'd eat back home after a long day in the mountains. Kane sat across from her, his own tray untouched, his arms folded on the table. He hadn't stopped staring at her since they'd sat down. "You know," he said finally, "in 12 years as a SEAL, I've seen a lot of things that shouldn't be possible. I've seen guys make shots that defied physics. I've seen operators survive things that should have killed them. I've seen combat situations that Hollywood couldn't dream up." He leaned forward slightly. "But I have never seen what you just did out there." Kaya took a bite of chicken, chewed slowly, swallowed. "It was just a shot." "Just a shot?" Kane's laugh was short, sharp. "Kaya, the current world record for a confirmed sniper kill is 3,871 meters. A Canadian Special Forces sniper in Iraq 2017. You just beat that by 129 meters, with a rifle that was built before the Vietnam War." "My rifle works fine," Kaya said quietly. "That's not the point. Kane ran a hand through his short hair, frustration creeping into his voice. The point is that you shouldn't exist. Someone with your skill level should be on a military roster somewhere. Should have gone through scout sniper school, should have been recruited into special operations. But according to your background check, and yes, we ran one, you've never served a day in uniform. You've never been to a military training course. You've never even applied to join. Kaya met his eyes. I didn't need to. Why not? Because my grandfather taught me everything the military would have taught me, she said. And he did it without the paperwork. Kane sat back, studying her. Tell me about him. Kaya was quiet for a moment. Then she set down her fork and folded her hands on the table. Edward Whitehorse, she said softly. Marine Corps scout sniper, 1st Force Reconnaissance Company. 3 tours in Vietnam, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, a whole wall of commendations he never talked about. Her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it, a current of emotion, of memory. He came back from the war in 1971, she continued. Went home to the Crow Reservation in Montana and never left. He didn't talk about what he did over there. Didn't tell war stories. Didn't brag. But every morning before the sun came up, he'd go out into the high country with his rifle. And when I was old enough to walk, he started taking me with him. Kane listened, silent. He taught me to read the wind, Kaya said. Taught me to understand bullet drop, drift, trajectory. Taught me that shooting isn't about strength. It's about patience, about breathing, about becoming part of the landscape instead of fighting against it. She glanced down at her hands, calloused, strong, hands that knew work, knew hardship, knew the weight of a rifle. When I was 8, he taught me to shoot a .22 at cans from 100 yards. When I was 12, he taught me to hunt elk at 600. When I was 16, he started teaching me the things he learned in the war. Windage calculations, elevation adjustments, how to shoot from unstable positions, how to control your heartbeat so it doesn't throw off your aim. And when you were 26? Kane asked quietly. Kaya looked up at him. When I was 26, he died. Heart attack. Out in the mountains, doing what he loved. And he left me his rifle and a note that said, "Don't let them tell you what you can't do." The mess hall had gone quiet. Kaya hadn't noticed, but the conversations around them had stopped. Men were listening now, leaning in from nearby tables, their food forgotten. Kane's expression had softened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Kaya said. He lived exactly the life he wanted. He came home from war, raised a family, and passed on everything he knew. That's more than most people get. "And now you're here," Kane said, "shooting better than every sniper in the U.S. military. Why? What are you trying to prove?" Kaya's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm not trying to prove anything." "Then why did you come?" "Because you challenged me," she said simply, "and I don't walk away from challenges." Kane smiled, a real smile this time, not the professional mask he usually wore. "You sound like a SEAL." "Maybe SEALs sound like me," Kaya said, a hint of amusement in her voice. That got a laugh from the nearby tables. A few of the operators raised their coffee cups in salute. Kane shook his head, still smiling. Then he grew serious again. "Kaya, I'm going to be straight with you," he said. "What you did out there today, that's not just impressive, it's operationally relevant. There are situations, real-world combat scenarios, where a shot like that could save lives, could change the outcome of a mission." He leaned forward. "We could use someone like you." Kaya frowned. "I'm not joining the military." "I'm not asking you to," Kane said. "But I am asking you to consider working with us. As a consultant, a contractor. We've got sniper training programs that could benefit from your expertise. We've got operators who need to learn how to push beyond the limits of what they think is possible." "I'm not a teacher," Kaya said. "No," Kane agreed. "You're better than that. You're living proof that there are levels of skill we haven't even begun to explore." Kaya was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, she said, "What would this involve?" "Training," Kane said. "Coming out here a few times a year, working with our advanced sniper students, showing them your techniques, challenging them the way we challenged you. And in return? In return, you get access to our facilities, our equipment, our range time. You get to shoot with the best of the best, and you get paid, well, for your time. Kaya considered this. It wasn't about the money. She lived simply, needed little, and the prize winnings from shooting competitions kept her truck running and her freezer full. But the idea of having access to world-class facilities, of testing herself against the absolute best, that was tempting. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Kane nodded. "Fair enough. Take your time." He stood picking up his tray. But before he walked away, he paused. "One more thing," he said. "That nickname. Native Ghost. Does it bother you?" Kaya tilted her head slightly. "Why would it? Some people might find it, I don't know, insensitive, stereotypical." Kaya's lips curved into a small smile. "My people have been called a lot worse than Ghost," she said. "And besides, they're not wrong. I do disappear when I want to." Kane laughed. "Yeah, I noticed." He started to walk away, then stopped again. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad you're real. For a while there, I thought you might actually be a ghost." Kaya watched him go, then turned back to her meal. Around her, the mess hall slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed, trays clattered, the normal rhythm of military life reasserted itself. But Kaya could feel the eyes on her, could sense the shift in the atmosphere. These men had seen her as a curiosity, a challenge, maybe even a joke. Now they saw her as something else, a peer, a warrior, someone who belonged. The afternoon brought another surprise. Kaya had just finished cleaning her rifle, breaking it down, inspecting every component, oiling the action, running a patch through the barrel, when someone knocked on the door of the small quarters she'd been assigned. "It's open," she called. The door swung inward and Derek, Hammer Morrison, stepped inside. The same SEAL who'd laughed at her on day one. The same man who'd called her a girl with an antique rifle. He looked different now, less cocky, more uncertain. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Got a minute?" Kaya set down the cleaning rod and gestured to the chair across from her. "Sure." Hammer sat, his massive frame making the standard-issue chair look like a piece of dollhouse furniture. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just sat there, hands clasped, staring at the floor. Finally, he looked up. "I owe you an apology," he said. Kaya raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For being an asshole," Hammer said bluntly. "When you showed up, I didn't take you seriously. I saw you, saw that old rifle, and I thought it was a joke. I thought someone was wasting our time." He shook his head. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Kaya studied him for a moment. There was genuine remorse in his eyes, genuine respect. "Apology accepted," she said quietly. Hammer let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thanks." "Can I ask you something?" Kaya said. "Yeah, of course." "Why did you laugh?" Hammer blinked. "What?" "When I showed up," Kaya said. "When you first saw me. Why did you laugh?" Hammer was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Honestly," he said, "because I was scared." That surprised her. "Scared? Of me?" "Not of you specifically," Hammer said. "Of what you represented. Of the idea that someone could be better than me at something I've spent my entire adult life mastering. I've been a SEAL for 8 years. I've been through Scout Sniper School, advanced urban sniper training, high-angle shooting courses. I've made shots in combat that most people would consider impossible." He looked at her directly. "And then you show up. No military background, no formal training, just you and that rifle, and you make me look like an amateur. That's hard to accept." Kaya nodded slowly. "I get that." "Do you?" Hammer asked. "Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, you've never had to deal with failure. You've never had to face the fact that someone might be better than you." Kaya's expression hardened slightly. "You don't know anything about me." "Then tell me," Hammer said. "Help me understand." Kaya was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice low. "You think I've never failed?" she said. "You think I've never missed a shot, never doubted myself, never wondered if I was good enough?" She stood, walking to the window, looking out at the desert beyond. "I grew up on a reservation," she said. "Do you know what that's like? Do you know what it's like to grow up in a place where the suicide rate is higher than the national average, where poverty is just a fact of life, where everyone around you is trying to forget their pain with alcohol or drugs or violence?" Hammer said nothing. "I watched my cousins drop out of school," Kaya continued. "I watched my friends give up on their dreams. I watched people who could have been something, could have done something, just fade away. Because that's what you do when you've been told your whole life that you don't matter, that you're invisible." She turned to face him. "So I made a choice," she said. "I decided that I wouldn't be invisible. I decided that I would be so good at something, so undeniably, impossibly good, that no one could ignore me, that no one could tell me I didn't belong." Her eyes were fierce now. "And yes, I've failed," she said. "I've missed shots. I've lost competitions. I've had days where I wondered if I was wasting my time, if I should just give up and accept the life that everyone expected me to live." She stepped closer to Hammer. "But I didn't give up," she said. "Because my grandfather taught me that the only person who can defeat you is yourself, and I refuse to be my own enemy." Hammer stared at her, something like awe in his eyes. "Damn," he said softly. Kaya smiled slightly. "So, yeah, I understand what it's like to face someone better than you. I do it every time I look in the mirror and wonder if I can be better tomorrow than I was today." Hammer stood, extending his hand. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. Can we start over?" Kaya shook his hand. His grip was strong, but he was careful not to crush her fingers. "I'm Derek Morrison," he said. "People call me Hammer. I'm a petty officer with SEAL Team 3, and I have a lot to learn about humility." "Kaya Whitehorse," she replied. "People call me Native Ghost, and I'm just someone who loves to shoot." Hammer grinned. "Just someone who loves to shoot? Lady, you just made a 4,000-meter shot with a rifle older than my dad. You're a legend." "Legends aren't real," Kaya said. "Maybe not," Hammer said, "but you are." That evening, Kaya found herself back on the range. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple and deep crimson. The heat of the day was fading, replaced by the cool whisper of evening wind. She was alone. The SEALs had gone to their barracks. The range officers had locked up the equipment sheds, and the observation deck was empty. Just her, the desert, and the Winchester Model 70. She set up at the 1,000-meter line, not to break records, not to prove anything, just to shoot, to feel the rifle in her hands, to remember why she loved this. She chambered around, pressed her cheek to the stock, and found her target through the scope. And then she heard footsteps behind her. "Mind if I join you?" She turned. Lieutenant Commander Kane stood there, his own rifle case slung over his shoulder. "Range is closed," Kaya said. "I'm the range officer," Kane replied with a smile. "I can bend the rules." He sat up next to her, unpacking a beautiful custom rifle, a precision instrument worth more than Kaya's truck, more than everything she owned combined. They shot in silence for a while, trading shots, calling corrections, falling into the easy rhythm that shooters share. Finally, Kane spoke. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on the question," Kaya said. "Why haven't you competed internationally?" Kane asked. "With your skill level, you could dominate the precision rifle series, the King of 2 Miles, all the major long-range competitions. You could make real money. Build a career." Kaya was quiet for a moment. "Because it's not about the competition," she said. "It's not about the money or the fame or proving I'm the best." "Then what is it about?" Kaya looked out at the desert, at the vast expanse of sand and sky. "It's about the connection," she said softly. "When I'm behind the rifle, when I'm lining up a shot, I feel connected to something bigger than myself, connected to the land, connected to my grandfather, connected to a tradition that goes back generations." She paused. "My people have been hunters for thousands of years," she continued. "We survived in places that would kill most people. We learned to read the wind, to track game across impossible distances, to make every shot count because we couldn't afford to waste ammunition or opportunity. And you see yourself as part of that tradition, Kane said. I am part of that tradition, Kaya corrected gently. Every time I shoot, I honor my ancestors. Every time I hit my target, I prove that we're still here, that we haven't been erased. Kane nodded slowly. I think I understand. Do you? Kaya asked, not unkindly. Maybe not completely, Kane admitted, but I understand what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself, to carry on a legacy, to fight for something that matters. He looked at her. That's what being a SEAL is for me, he said. It's not about the missions or the medals. It's about being part of a brotherhood, about knowing that the men next to you would die for you, and you'd die for them. Kaya considered this. Then maybe we're not so different after all. No, Kane said. Maybe we're not. They shot until the stars came out, until the desert cooled and the moon rose over the mountains, until the only light was the glow of the scope reticles and the distant shimmer of target reflectors. And in that moment, Kaya Whitehorse understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. She wasn't alone anymore. She'd found her tribe. The call came at 600 hours, 3 days after Kaya's record-breaking shot. She was in the makeshift gym, really just a converted storage building with free weights and a pull-up bar, working through her morning routine when her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was local. Whitehorse, she answered, setting down the kettlebell. Kaya, it's Kane. His voice was crisp, professional, with an undercurrent of urgency. I need you to come to the briefing room, Building 7, 30 minutes. What's this about? I'll explain when you get here. And Kaya? He paused. Bring your rifle. The line went dead. 28 minutes later, Kaya walked into Building 7 carrying the Winchester in its worn leather case. The briefing room was small, just a conference table, a few chairs, and a large monitor mounted on the wall. But the people inside were anything but ordinary. Lieutenant Commander Kane sat at the head of the table. Next to him was Master Chief Petty Officer James Ironside Williams, a barrel-chested man in his 40s with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jawline. Across from them sat 2 men Kaya didn't recognize, one in Army Special Forces tab and beret, the other in plain clothes with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen too much combat. And at the far end of the table sat a woman in her mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, wearing the insignia of a Navy captain. Everyone turned as Kaya entered. Whitehorse, Kane said, standing. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Kaya took the empty chair next to Kane, setting her rifle case on the floor. She could feel the weight of the room's attention on her. Kane gestured to the others. Introductions, Master Chief Williams, SEAL Team 5, Captain Sarah Brennan, Naval Special Warfare Command, Colonel Mike Torres, Army Special Forces, and our friend in the corner is Mr. Smith, CIA Special Activities Division. The man in plain clothes, Smith, though Kaya doubted that was his real name, nodded curtly. Now that we're all here, Captain Brennan said, her voice cool and authoritative. Let's get to the point. Miss Whitehorse, your performance over the past few days has attracted attention at the highest levels of USOCOM. USOCOM? Kaya asked. United States Special Operations Command, Kane explained. The unified command for all Special Operations Forces. Brennan leaned forward. What you did on that range, the 4,000-meter shot, isn't just a personal achievement. It represents a capability we didn't know existed outside of theoretical models and computer simulations. I don't understand, Kaya said. I made a shot. A good shot, yes, but it's not just about the shot, Colonel Torres interrupted. His voice was gravelly, worn from years of shouting orders in combat zones. It's about what that shot represents. In modern warfare, long-range precision fire is a force multiplier. One well-placed round can eliminate a high-value target, disrupt enemy operations, save American lives. But our current limitations, Mr. Smith added, are technological and human. Even our best snipers, using our best equipment, max out around 3,500 meters in ideal conditions. You exceeded that with a rifle that should be in a museum. Kaya's eyes narrowed. You're not here to congratulate me. No, Brennan said. We're here to test you. She pressed a button on a remote, and the wall monitor flickered to life. It showed an aerial view of a desert facility, more extensive than the training range where Kaya had been shooting, with multiple firing positions, vehicle courses, and what looked like mock-up buildings. "This is Range 42, Brennan said, "also known as the Crucible. It's where we test new weapon systems, new tactics, and new capabilities." "You want me to shoot there?" Kaya said. It wasn't a question. "We want you to compete there," Kane corrected, "against the best long-range shooters in the U.S. military." Kaya sat back in her chair. "Why?" "Because we need to know if you're the real deal," Master Chief Williams said bluntly. "That 4,000-meter shot could have been luck. Could have been perfect conditions. Could have been 100 different variables aligning in your favor." "It wasn't luck," Kaya said quietly. "Prove it," Williams challenged. Kaya met his eyes. There was no hostility there, just professional skepticism. The look of a man who'd seen too many people claim to be heroes, only to fold when it mattered. She turned to Captain Brennan. "What are the terms?" Brennan smiled slightly. 3 days from now, Range 42, 10 shooters total, 5 SEALs, 3 Marine Scout snipers, 1 Army Delta Force operator, and you. A series of challenges designed to test every aspect of long-range marksmanship, accuracy, speed, adaptability, performance under stress. "And if I win?" "If you win," Brennan said, "you'll have earned the right to call yourself the best long-range shooter in the United States military, even though you're not military. And if I lose?" "Then you go home," Kane said simply. "No harm, no foul. You'll still be one of the best civilian shooters in the world, but you won't be this." He gestured vaguely. "Whatever it is you're becoming." Kaya understood what he meant. She was at a crossroads. She could walk away now, return to Montana, continue her life as it had been, quiet, private, anonymous, except in small shooting circles. Or she could step into the light, fully, completely, irreversibly. She thought about her grandfather, about what he would say. She already knew the answer. "I'll do it," she said. Brennan nodded, satisfied. "Good. You'll have access to Range 42 for the next 2 days to familiarize yourself with the terrain. The competition begins at 0800 on Friday." "One question," Kaya said. "Can I use my own rifle?" Williams laughed. "Sweetheart, you can use a slingshot if you want, but you'll be competing against shooters with $50,000 precision instruments. You sure you want to stick with that antique?" Kaya rested her hand on the rifle case. "This antique has never let me down." "Your funeral," Williams said, but there was a hint of respect in his voice. The meeting adjourned. As the others filed out, Kane hung back. "Kaya," he said quietly, "you know what you're walking into, right? These guys aren't going to go easy on you because you're a woman or because you're a civilian. They're going to come at you with everything they have." "Good," Kaya said. "I wouldn't want it any other way." Kane studied her face. "You're not nervous at all, are you?" "Should I be?" "Most people would be," Kane said. "Hell, I'd be nervous, and I've been doing this for over a decade." Kaya picked up her rifle case and slung it over her shoulder. "Fear is just noise," she said. "My grandfather taught me how to tune it out." Range 42 was unlike anything Kaya had ever seen. It sprawled across 15 square miles of Nevada desert, with firing positions ranging from ground level to elevated platforms 50 feet in the air. There were static targets and moving targets, pop-up silhouettes and long-range steel plates. There were sections designed to simulate urban environments, others that mimicked mountainous terrain, and still others that looked like something out of a science fiction movie, all sharp angles and artificial obstacles. Kaya spent the next 2 days learning the range, walking every meter of it, studying the wind patterns, the heat distortion, the way sound echoed off the artificial structures. She memorized distances, calculated trajectories, and built mental maps of every possible shooting position. And she wasn't alone. The other competitors were there too, doing the same thing. She saw them from a distance, hard-faced men with expensive rifles and tactical gear, moving with the confidence of warriors who'd earned their places through blood and sweat and years of training. They didn't approach her, didn't acknowledge her, just watched from afar, sizing her up, calculating whether she was a threat or a curiosity. On the second day, one of them broke the silence. Kaya was on the 2,000-meter range, practicing elevation holds, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find a man in his early 30s, lean and wiry, with the weathered skin of someone who'd spent most of his life outdoors. He wore Marine Corps fatigues with Scout sniper tabs. "Mind if I shoot next to you?" he asked. "Free country," Kaya said. He set up his rifle, a beautiful custom build chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum, and got into position. They shot in silence for a few minutes, both hitting their targets with mechanical precision. Finally, he spoke without taking his eye from his scope. "Gunnery Sergeant Alex Rivera," he said. "Marine Corps Scout Sniper, 3rd Marine Division." "Kaya Whitehorse." "I know who you are," Rivera said. He sent another round downrange. "Perfect hit. Everyone here knows who you are. You're the civilian who made the SEALs look like amateurs." "I didn't mean to embarrass anyone." "Didn't say you did," Rivera said. "Just stating facts." He adjusted his scope, made a minute correction, and fired again. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Why are you here?" Rivera asked. "You've already proved you can shoot. You've already made your mark. Why risk it by coming to a competition where you might lose?" Kaya thought about that. "Because my grandfather taught me that you should never stop challenging yourself. The moment you think you've reached the top is the moment you start falling." Rivera grunted. "Your grandfather sounds like a smart man." He was. Was? He passed last year. "I'm sorry." Rivera finally pulled away from his scope and looked at her directly. "What branch did he serve in?" "Marines," Kaya said. "Scout sniper. Vietnam." Rivera's expression changed, softened. "No shit? No shit. What was his name?" "Edward Whitehorse." Rivera was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then his eyes widened. "Wait, Eddie Whitehorse? The ghost of Quezon?" Now it was Kaya's turn to be surprised. "You know about him?" "Know about him?" Rivera said. "Every Marine Scout sniper knows about Eddie Whitehorse. He's a legend. They say he made shots that shouldn't have been possible, that he could disappear into terrain and reappear 1,000 meters away, that the VC were so terrified of him, they put a bounty on his head." Kaya felt a swell of emotion in her chest, pride, grief, connection. "I didn't know," she said softly. "He never talked about it." "The best ones never do," Rivera said. He extended his hand. "It's an honor to shoot with you, Miss Whitehorse, and it's an honor to compete against Eddie Whitehorse's granddaughter." Kaya shook his hand. "Just Kaya, and thank you." Rivera picked up his rifle. "See you on Friday, and just so we're clear, I'm going to do my absolute best to beat you." Kaya smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As Rivera walked away, Kaya felt something shift inside her. She'd come here thinking she was alone, an outsider, a civilian intruding on a military world. But maybe she wasn't an outsider after all. Maybe she was exactly where she belonged. Friday morning came with a clear sky and a dry wind. Kaya stood at the starting line with 9 other shooters, all of them wearing tactical gear and carrying rifles that cost more than most people's cars. She wore simple BDUs, her grandfather's rifle slung across her back, and a calm expression that betrayed nothing. Captain Brennan stood on a platform in front of them, her voice amplified by a microphone. "Gentlemen and Miss Whitehorse," she began, "welcome to the Crucible. Over the next 8 hours, you will face 7 challenges designed to test every aspect of long-range marksmanship. You will be scored on accuracy, speed, and adaptability. The shooter with the highest cumulative score at the end of the day will be declared the winner." She paused, letting that sink in. "The challenges are as follows. Challenge 1, precision. Static targets at ranges from 800 to 3,000 meters. Challenge 2, speed. Moving targets, 30 seconds per engagement. Challenge 3, elevation. Shooting from platforms at varying heights. Challenge 4, low visibility. Targets obscured by smoke and heat distortion. Challenge 5, unknown distance. No rangefinders, no calculators. Pure estimation and skill." Brennan's eyes swept across the line of shooters. Challenge 6, stress fire. Targets at 1,500 meters while under simulated combat conditions, noise, movement, time pressure. And finally, Challenge 7. She smiled. The impossible shot. 4,500 meters. One round. One chance. A murmur ran through the line of shooters. 4,500 meters was beyond anything most of them had ever attempted. It was beyond the published range of any military sniper rifle in service. But Kaya didn't flinch. She'd come this far. She wasn't backing down now. Any questions? Brennan asked. Silence. Then let's begin. Challenge 1 began at 08:30 hours, and from the first shot, Kaya knew this was going to be different from anything she'd done before. The precision course wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about hitting small targets at extreme distances under imperfect conditions. The 800-meter shots were against 8-inch plates. The 1,200-meter shots were against 6-inch plates, and the 3,000-meter shots, the ones that separated professionals from masters, were against targets barely larger than a human head. Kaya went through her routine with mechanical efficiency. Breathe, settle, calculate, shoot. The Winchester kicked against her shoulder with familiar authority, and downrange, steel plates rang like church bells. She wasn't the fastest. Gunnery Sergeant Rivera was faster, his bolt manipulation smooth and practiced from years of combat deployments. And she wasn't using the most advanced equipment. Several of the SEALs had rifles with electronic ballistic calculators and wind meters built into their scopes. But she was accurate. Every shot, every plate, center mass. By the time Challenge 1 concluded, she was tied for second place with Rivera, just 3 points behind a SEAL named Chief Petty Officer Marcus Crosshair Chen, who'd run the course with almost robotic precision. Challenge 2, speed, was where things got interesting. The moving targets appeared at random distances, traveling at different speeds across the desert floor. Some moved laterally. Others moved toward or away from the shooting position. The shooters had 30 seconds from target appearance to impact, and every miss cost them points. This was where the SEALs excelled. They'd trained for years on moving targets, learning to lead their shots to account for target velocity and angle. They moved like machines, acquiring targets, calculating leads, sending rounds with brutal efficiency. But Kaya had grown up hunting. She'd tracked elk through pine forests, anticipated their movements, learned to shoot running game at distances most hunters wouldn't attempt. The skill wasn't different, just the application. She watched the patterns, learned the timing. And when her turn came, she didn't think. She just flowed. Target up, lead, fire, hit. Target up, lead, fire, hit. Again and again, the Winchester barked, and downrange, targets dropped. When the scores were posted, she'd climbed to first place. Chen was 2 points behind. Rivera was 4 points back. The other shooters were starting to notice. Challenge 3, elevation, tested their ability to shoot from unstable platforms at varying heights. Some positions were 50 feet up on rickety scaffolding that swayed in the wind. Others were in cramped towers with limited visibility. The targets ranged from 600 to 2,000 meters, and the angles were unforgiving. Kaya approached it like climbing. She'd spent her youth scrambling up Montana mountain faces, finding stable positions on narrow ledges. This was the same principle. Find your balance, control your breathing, become part of the structure. From a platform that made some of the bigger SEALs visibly nervous, she sent rounds that threaded through narrow windows and struck plates most shooters couldn't even see clearly. By the end of Challenge 3, she'd extended her lead to 6 points. In the observer's tent, Captain Brennan watched the scores with an expression that gave nothing away. But Lieutenant Commander Kane, standing beside her, couldn't hide his smile. "She's not human," Master Chief Williams muttered, shaking his head. "That's the only explanation." "She's human," Kane said quietly. "She's just the best I've ever seen." Challenge 4, low visibility, was brutal. Smoke machines pumped thick clouds across the firing lanes. Heat mirage rose from portable generators, distorting the targets, and the light was wrong, positioned to create maximum glare and confusion. This was where technology should have given the military shooters an advantage. Their advanced optics, their thermal scopes, their computer-assisted targeting systems, all of it designed for exactly this kind of scenario. But Kaya didn't need technology. She'd learned to shoot in morning fog on the reservation, in smoke from forest fires, in the shimmering heat distortion of midday summer hunts. She'd learned to trust her instincts, to feel where the target was, even when she couldn't see it clearly. She closed her eyes for a moment, felt the wind, smelled the smoke, let her mind paint the picture her eyes couldn't see. And then she shot. The scores stayed close. Chen kept pace, his equipment helping him cut through the visibility problems. But Rivera fell back, frustrated by conditions he hadn't trained for as extensively. After 4 challenges with 3 to go, Kaya held a 9-point lead. Challenge 5, unknown distance, was where things got psychological. No rangefinders, no spotters, no calculators, just the shooter, the rifle, and their ability to estimate distance by eye and make the shot. The targets were scattered across the desert at random distances between 700 and 2,500 meters. Each shooter had 5 minutes to identify 10 targets, estimate their distances, calculate their holds, and engage. This was an old-school skill, something the military had mostly moved away from in favor of technology and precision instruments. But it was a skill Kaya's grandfather had drilled into her from childhood. "Your eyes are instruments," he'd told her. "Learn to calibrate them. Learn to see distance the way you feel temperature. It should be instinct, not calculation." Kaya stepped to the line, looked downrange, and let her training take over. That target, the one beside the large rock, was approximately 950 meters. She could tell by the size, by the way it sat in the landscape, by 1,000 tiny visual cues her conscious mind didn't fully register, but her trained eye understood. The one on the ridgeline, 1,600 meters, give or take 50. The cluster near the dried riverbed, 2,200 meters. She didn't hesitate, didn't second guess, just estimated, adjusted, and fired. 10 shots, 10 hits. When the officials measured the actual distances and calculated her accuracy, they found she'd been off by an average of only 37 meters across all 10 targets. At those ranges, that kind of estimation was almost supernatural. Chen had done well too, but his estimates were less accurate, averaging around 90 meters off. Rivera had struggled, his reliance on technology in recent years dulling his natural estimation skills. Kaya's lead extended to 15 points. With 2 challenges remaining, the competition was effectively between her and Chen. Everyone else was too far back to catch up. Challenge 6, Stress Fire, was designed to break people. The scenario was simple. Engage targets at 1,500 meters while under simulated combat conditions. But the simulation was intense. Speakers blasted recorded combat sounds, gunfire, explosions, screaming. Smoke grenades detonated nearby. Range officials shouted contradictory orders. Strobe lights flashed from multiple directions. It was chaos by design. The shooters were given 60 seconds and 5 targets. Hit all 5 in the time limit. Score maximum points. Miss, and watch your ranking plummet. Kaya watched Chen go first. He was good, incredibly good. His breathing was controlled, his movements efficient. Despite the chaos around him, he found his rhythm, acquired his targets, and sent his rounds. 4 hits, 1 miss. It was an impressive performance under pressure, but it wasn't perfect. Then it was Kaya's turn. She stepped into the chaos, and something strange happened. The noise didn't bother her. The lights didn't distract her. The shouting voices were just background, because she'd been here before. Not literally, but in her mind, in her training, in the stories her grandfather had told about combat in Vietnam, about learning to find stillness in the middle of hell, about becoming an island of calm in a storm of violence. "The world will try to shake you," he'd said. "Let it try. You are the mountain. The mountain doesn't move." She became the mountain. Target acquired. Breathe. Fire. Hit. Target acquired. Breathe. Fire. Hit. The Winchester spoke 5 times in 53 seconds. 5 hits. Perfect score. In the observer's tent, Master Chief Williams stood up from his chair. Did she just perfect the stress fire course? "Yes," Captain Brennan said quietly. "Yes, she did." Kane was grinning like a proud father. "That's my girl." Williams shot him a look. "Your girl? Since when is she yours?" Since I was smart enough to recognize what she is, Kane said. A once-in-a-generation talent. The sun was starting to descend toward the horizon when they reached Challenge 7, the impossible shot. 4,500 meters, nearly 2.8 miles. A distance so extreme that the bullet would be in the air for over 7 seconds, would drop more than 1,500 feet from its apex, and would be subject to wind drift, Coriolis effect, and a dozen other variables that most shooters never even considered. The target was a steel plate, 4 feet square, positioned on a distant ridgeline that shimmered in the heat. Each shooter would get one chance. One shot, all or nothing. The stakes were clear. A hit would add 50 points to their score. A miss would add nothing. With Kaya's lead at 18 points after the stress fire, she and Chen were the only ones who really mattered. If Chen hit and Kaya missed, he'd win by 32 points. If both missed, Kaya won. If both hit, Kaya won. But if Kaya hit and Chen missed, well, that would be legendary. Chen shot first. He was confident, professional. He'd spent 2 years as a sniper instructor at the Naval Special Warfare Center, had deployed 3 times to combat zones, had made shots that earned him commendations and respect from the entire special operations community. He set up his rifle, a custom-built precision instrument worth $75,000, equipped with the most advanced ballistic calculator money could buy. He plugged in his data. Temperature, humidity, wind speed, barometric pressure, altitude, the rotation of the Earth. He made his calculations. He settled into his position, and he fired. 7 seconds later, the spotter's verdict came through. Miss. 6 meters right, 2 meters low. Chen's jaw tightened. It was an incredibly close miss at that distance. Many shooters would have been hundreds of meters off, but a miss was a miss. He stood, safed his rifle, and walked off the line without a word. Now it was Kaya's turn. She approached the firing position carrying the Winchester Model 70, that beat-up old rifle that had belonged to her grandfather, that had been modified and maintained over decades, that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than in a competition with the best military shooters in America. She set up, checked her scope, worked the bolt to chamber a round, and then she paused. Around her, over 100 people had gathered to watch. SEALs, Marines, Army Special Forces, range officials, even some senior officers who'd heard about the competition and driven out to witness history. They were all silent now, waiting. Lieutenant Commander Kane stood in the front of the crowd, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Gunnery Sergeant Rivera stood beside him. "She's going to make it," he said quietly. "You sound sure," Kane replied. "I am," Rivera said. "She's Eddie Whitehorse's granddaughter, and Eddie never missed." Kaya closed her eyes. In her mind, she was back in Montana, back in the high country, back with her grandfather on a ridge overlooking a valley where an elk stood at an impossible distance. "How do you know you can make that shot?" she'd asked, young and uncertain. "Because I've already made it," her grandfather had replied. "1,000 times in my mind. By the time I pull the trigger, I'm just confirming what I already know." She opened her eyes. She didn't use a calculator, didn't check digital readouts, didn't consult charts or tables. She just knew the wind, 0. 4 mils from the northwest, gusting slightly, but with a pattern she'd observed all day. Knew the distance, 4,482 meters by her estimation, close enough. Knew the hold, the exact combination of elevation and windage that would send the bullet through 2.8 miles of air and strike a 4-foot square of steel on a distant ridge. She made one adjustment to her scope, then another. Small movements. Precise. Certain. She settled into her shooting position, pressed her cheek to the stock, the same stock her grandfather's cheek had pressed against in Vietnam, in Montana, in 100 different places over 60 years. She found her breathing rhythm. Let her heart beat slow, let the world narrow down to just her, the rifle, and the target, and in the space between one breath and the next, she squeezed the trigger. The sound of the shot echoed across the desert like thunder. The bullet left the barrel at 2,160 feet per second, spinning at 168,000 RPM, carrying all the knowledge, all the skill, all the history of the Whitehorse family with it. It climbed, arsed, fell, 7.3 seconds. An eternity compressed into a handful of heartbeats. And then, clang. The unmistakable ring of copper-jacketed lead striking steel. For one perfect moment, there was absolute silence. And then, the desert erupted. Hit! Confirmed hit! 4,500 meters! She did it! Impossible! SEALs were shouting. Marines were cursing in disbelief. Army Special Forces operators were shaking their heads in awe. The range officials were scrambling to verify the data, to measure the distance, to confirm what everyone had just witnessed. But Kaya didn't react. She simply worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing, and saved her rifle. Then she stood, slung the Winchester over her shoulder, and turned to face the crowd. Her expression was calm, peaceful, like she'd just confirmed something she'd always known. Lieutenant Commander Kane pushed through the crowd, followed by Captain Brennan, Master Chief Williams, and a dozen others. They reached Kaya as the official confirmation came through the radio. Range control to observer deck. Final verification complete. Target impact confirmed. Distance, 4,512 meters. Direct center mass hit. It's official. New world record. Kane stood in front of Kaya, and for a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "Congratulations," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You just became the greatest long-range shooter in recorded history." Kaya shook his hand. "I just did what my grandfather taught me." "Your grandfather," Kane said, "raised a legend." Behind him, Gunnery Sergeant Rivera stepped forward. There were tears in his eyes, tears of pride, of connection to something bigger than himself. "Eddie would be proud," he said simply. "I know," Kaya replied softly. "I can feel him here." Captain Brennan approached, her professional demeanor cracking slightly to reveal genuine amazement. "Miss Whitehorse," she said, "on behalf of the United States Naval Special Warfare Command, I want to offer you a formal position as a consultant and instructor. We need you. Our snipers need you. The entire Special Operations community needs you." Kaya was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she smiled. "I'll accept," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "I train them my way," Kaya said, "not with computers and calculators, not with technology. I teach them what my grandfather taught me, how to become part of the landscape, how to listen to the wind, how to make a rifle an extension of their soul." Brennan glanced at Kane, who nodded emphatically. "Deal," Brennan said. Around them, the crowd of operators began to disperse, heading toward the debriefing tent, toward their gear, toward whatever came next. But they'd all been changed by what they'd witnessed. They'd all seen something impossible become reality. As the sun dipped toward the Nevada horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Kaya Whitehorse stood alone for a moment, her grandfather's rifle in her hands, and whispered words that only the wind could hear. "We did it, grandfather, together." And somewhere, in the space between earth and sky, she felt his presence, felt his pride, felt his love. The native ghost had made her stand, and the legends would never forget. Epilogue. 6 months later. The snow was falling softly on the Crow Reservation when Kaya pulled her truck into the driveway of her grandfather's old cabin. It had been 6 months since the competition. 6 months of traveling back and forth between Montana and Nevada, training Navy SEALs and Marine Scout snipers, teaching them the old ways her grandfather had passed down to her. 6 months of watching hardened warriors become humbled students, learning that sometimes the old wisdom was the best wisdom. She'd been featured in military journals, shooting magazines, even made an appearance on a podcast for special operations veterans. The Navy had offered her more money than she'd ever imagined, but she'd negotiated carefully, enough to live comfortably, but not so much that she'd lose herself in wealth. Because that wasn't what this was about. It had never been about the money or the fame or the recognition. It was about honoring her grandfather, about proving that the old ways still worked, about showing that a native woman from a reservation in Montana could stand shoulder to shoulder with the most elite warriors in the world. And she'd done that. She grabbed her rifle case from the truck bed and walked into the cabin. The inside was exactly as her grandfather had left it. simple furniture, Navajo rugs on the wooden floor, photographs on the walls showing 3 generations of Whitehorse family hunters and warriors. She set the rifle case on the table and opened it. The Winchester Model 70 gleamed in the firelight, every surface familiar, every scratch and worn spot a memory. She ran her hand along the stock, feeling the wood grain, feeling the history. And then she noticed something. Tucked into the case, beneath the rifle, was an envelope she hadn't seen before. Old, yellowed with age, her name written on it in her grandfather's careful handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photograph showed a young Marine in Vietnam. Her grandfather, barely 20 years old, holding the Winchester Model 70, standing with his scout sniper team in front of a helicopter. And on the back of the photo, written in faded ink, "To whoever carries this rifle after me, you are not alone. Every shot you make, I make with you. Every target you hit, we hit together. The rifle is just metal and wood, but the spirit lives forever. Make me proud. Eddie Whitehorse, USMC." Tears streamed down Kaya's face. She pressed the photograph to her chest and whispered, "I made you proud, grandfather. I promise you, I made you proud." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the mountains in white silence. And inside the cabin, warmed by the fire, Kaya Whitehorse, the native ghost, the woman who'd made the impossible shot, the greatest long-range shooter the world had ever seen, sat with her grandfather's rifle and felt, for the first time in a long time, completely at peace. She was exactly where she belonged. She was exactly who she was meant to be, and the legend of the native ghost was just beginning.